What's on, guys? J-Hoyd back with you today. Welcome back to Call of Duty Vanguard. We are back here on Cage. Still don't know, but we are back after being sick for like a week. So we are finally back and able to make videos. So this one should have gone up probably a week, maybe or two ago. But like I said, I got sick, so I couldn't actually, make videos without voice cracking every like 4.5 seconds. So this is going to be the post-stage 1 power rankings video for the CDL. So after that past weekend, congrats to OpTic. Obviously, we went over who won and who placed where. So we're here with new power rankings. I know, the stage 2 major qualifiers are already going, so we're not counting anything that's happened in stage 2 so far. We are just counting pre-stage 2, but post-stage 1 major. So that's where we are. That's where we're basing all of our our power rankings on. So I hope that makes sense to you guys, for you to follow along here. So let's start down in 12th place. So we're going to have the Paris Legion. They were 0-5 in the league, in the qualifiers. Then they go into Major 1. They win versus Seattle, but then lose versus Boston. So this team also does make a roster change going into stage 2, but like I said, we're not getting too much into there. So, I mean, they're the last place team. I think they got extremely lucky versus Seattle. Honestly, extremely lucky. Beating Boston isn't really a big deal, but like kind of is at the same time. So it's hard to put this team up. We need to see them consistently win and, not get lucky on one match and then end up losing anyway. So this Paris team still in 12th place. Our 11th place squad is going to be the New York Subliners, a team that went 1-4 in the first week of first stage of qualifiers, I should say. They did beat Boston. Then they go into the major and they play versus Atlanta and they play versus the LA Thieves, and they lose both times. So it's really hard to gauge where these guys are at, especially given their, internal problems that they're dealing with. This core 4 players should not be doing as bad as they are, but for whatever reason, they just cannot find a way to win right now. So it's hard to put these guys any higher, but I don't want to put them lower because they actually have a win and they faced off against some really tough teams. Especially given, the first stage, Seattle, the Gorillas, LA Thieves, and Boston, and then they faced Atlanta FaZe. I guess that was all in the Stage 1 qualifiers. And then they played just the LA Thieves at the Stage 1 major. So they got some hard matches in there. They played LA Thieves twice. They played Atlanta. And then everyone else is kind of, has that upset potential. Especially given a team that has not really found a way to win so far. So gotta leave New York down here at 11th place. In 10th place, a team that I'm very surprised is doing this bad, right? With Hook, Asim, Gunless, and Slasher. The LA Gorillas should not be in 10th place given the league right now. Like, it just should not, right? That team is built correctly, right? You have 2 really good ARs / flex player in Gunless. You have Hook, who has always been a very good player, considered to be one of the best players in the game at, a lot of times. And Asim, who does a lot of the dirty work for a submachine gun. This team should not be doing this bad. However, they go into stage 1. They do have some hard matches in there. They lost versus Boston, win versus New York, lost versus Toronto, lost versus London, lost versus Minnesota. I'm sorry, they beat London. Excuse me. They lost versus Minnesota, and then they lose versus Minnesota at the stage 1 major. So, again, it's hard to put where this team is at, given that, they haven't really found their footing yet. But as of right now, we're putting them in 10th place. Up in 9th place, we have the Florida Mutineers. This team stays the same spot as before. They have some pretty hard matches, going into, stage 1, and they face off against Boston and lose at the stage 1 major. So, again, has this team found their final form? I don't think so. But as for right now, 9th place seems to be pretty decent for them. Up in 8th place, another team that stayed in the same spot as our preseason power rankings is the Minnesota Rocker. This team had a really tough stage 1. They have OpTic, Seattle, London, Atlanta, and then the Los Angeles Guerrillas in stage 1 alone, which is crazy. Then they face off against the Los Angeles Guerrillas and the LA Thieves at stage 1. So haven't had the easiest of draws in stage 1 here, but I still think they're a solid team. 8th place, maybe can move them around, within the top like 6th, 7th, 8th place. But for now, we're going to leave them right there at 8th. Up in 7th place, we have the Boston Breach. Another team that I'm not really too high on. They're a little bit inconsistent, if you ask me, right? They're winning versus LA Guerrillas. They beat Paris, lost to Atlanta, New York, and OpTic. Then stage 1, you lose versus Atlanta, but then you beat Florida, you beat Paris, and then lose versus Toronto. So, again, this like 6th through almost even maybe 9th or 10th place are kind of interchangeable. Like a lot of teams that had a very tough stage 1 as far as like schedule strength, if you will. So again, honestly, I think Boston really should pick up another player. Now, Capsule, is arguably their best rookie, but I don't think he's that great. He's very inconsistent. Yes, he has his moments, but he's not consistently good enough to be on that squad, I think. If New York doesn't pick up like Paul X, maybe that'd be a really good option, for them. I think, who else is on Boston? Oh, Nero. I'm not sure who plays their flex role, but someone's got to be changing there. I mean, Nero's been pretty good. I mean, I don't know. I guess it all depends on how Boston feel about their team. Really, if they think they can win with that team, then do it. But I think given their current roster, I think mid-table right now is actually pretty good for them. But 7th place, they're gonna stay. Up to 6th place, Seattle. We put them down 1, like I said, in 6th, where they win versus New York, they win versus Toronto, win versus Minnesota, loss versus Florida and London, and then at stage 1 they lose to OpTic, and then I think they got reverse swept by Paris. So again, they're winning versus some teams that they should beat. They're losing against some teams that they also should beat. And then they lose versus OpTic and then lose versus Paris. So, they probably shouldn't have lost versus Paris. I mean, OpTic, yeah, they were on another level that tournament. I don't know. 6th place seems to be pretty fitting. Maybe they come back to form here in stage 2. We'll have to wait and see. But 6th place is a pretty good spot for them. Up into 5th place, we have the Toronto Ultra. Now, yes, I probably could have dropped these guys down a bit given their recent performance, like I said, at stage 1. They actually had a pretty rough stage, right? They lose to Seattle, then they win versus LA Guerrillas in Florida, then lose versus OpTic and LA Thieves. Then at stage 1, they win versus LA Thieves, lose to London, and then win against Boston, then they lose to Atlanta. So they're beating some teams they should beat, again, and they're losing to some teams that maybe they shouldn't, lose to. But, of course, they're going to have to find their way. They were one of the best teams last year for a reason. I think they'll bounce back. Hopefully not versus OpTic, but they still have a pretty good chance to stay in that top 6. Up into 4th place, we have the LA Thieves. So this team is a very good team. A team that's definitely going to be fighting for the top all year long, honestly. And I hate to say that, but I think they will. So this team lose to Atlanta. They win versus New York, Florida, Paris, and Seattle. Then at stage 1, they lose versus London. They win versus New York and Minnesota. And then they lose to Atlanta. So they lose to Atlanta, but they beat every other team that they should beat, right? New York, Paris, Florida, and Seattle. I think that's a pretty good place to put LA Thieves right now, given our top 3, which is probably pretty easy to guess. So up in 3rd place, we have the London Royal Ravens. They're up 7 spots from our preseason power rankings, mainly because they were a big unknown, big question marks behind this team. How will they perform? Then they come out and get, what, 2nd, I think, or 3rd or something like that in stage 1, and they look really good, right? They beat Florida, they beat OpTic, they beat Minnesota, but they lose to LA Guerrillas, which is weird. And then they beat Seattle. Stage 1, they beat LA Guerrillas, they beat Toronto, and then lose versus OpTic, and then lose versus Atlanta. So, I don't know how to really feel about that team. Maybe you could put LA Thieves and London interchangeable right now. But for now, we'll give London that third place spot. In second place, we have Atlanta FaZe. Now, you may be wondering, this team went 5-0 in the stage 1, but here's the thing. They beat Paris, Boston, Minnesota, New York, and LA Thieves in stage 1. Then they lose to OpTic at stage 1. Atlanta beats Boston, loses to OpTic, beat LA Thieves, beat Toronto, beat London, and lose to OpTic. So they're beating kind of some, like, other than LA Thieves, those other teams aren't that strong. Realistically, they're really not. But then they lose to OpTic twice, a reverse sweep, by the way, and then lose 5-2 in the finals of stage 1, of the stage 1 major. So, you know, given that OpTic kind of started the way they did and looked that good throughout stage 1 major, and then, you know, having OpTic beat them twice, it's very hard to not put OpTic at number 1, which, of course, spoiler, is our number 1 team. OpTic Texas goes up 2 spots from 3rd place and is now in 1st. So they lose 2 Game 5 Round 11s to start out stage 1 to London and Minnesota, but then they beat Paris, Toronto, and Boston. Then at stage 1, they beat Seattle, they beat Atlanta, they beat London, they beat Atlanta once again, and they win the stage 1 major. So it's hard not to put OpTic at number 1 right now. Obviously, FaZe is a tremendous team. They're going to be up there all year long, and they're still a very, very, very good team. And, you know, if we had 1A, 1B, this would be the 2 teams. But for now, we're going to have OpTic at number 1. So our full list is on your screen. OpTic Texas at number 1. Atlanta FaZe at 2. London Royal Ravens at 3. LA Thieves at 4. Toronto Ultra at 5. Seattle Surge at 6. Boston Breach at 7th. Minnesota Rocker at 8th. Florida Mutineers at 9th. 10th, we have the LA Guerrillas. 11th, we have the New York Subliners. And wrapping it all out, in 12th place, we have the Paris Legion. So that's it. But let me know your thoughts and comments down in the comment section below. Do you agree with my list? Do you not? Give me your reasoning behind it. I'd love to talk to you guys down below. But that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy, hit the like button down below if you haven't yet. Or if you're brand new here, make sure to subscribe. Turn on those post notifications to never miss an upload. And don't forget, you can always change your mind later. But with all that being said, guys, we'll see you in the next one.
In the shadows.